Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just finished a significant visit to Russia, where he attended the BRICS summit and Shanghai Cooperation Organization meet, apart from visiting 5 Central Asian countries. The two multilateral fora meetings are now being seen as part of defining a new international order. India's role in both these fora are being watched keenly internationally. The observer status granted to India at the SCO, which will soon be converted to a full membership status along with Pakistan, has drawn a lot of interest. What is it that India has gained from these two meets, and what can we look forward to following these meetings? How is it going to help India in terms of its strategic, economic and political interests? What kind of a balancing act India will have to play with the Western powers like America, considering the keen interest America has shown towards India? We will discuss all this today with M.K.Bhadrakumar, former ambassador, Srikanth Kondapalli, professor in Chinese studies at the JNU, Commodore Uday Bhaskar, director of Society for Policy Studies, Nandan Unnikrishnan, vice president and senior fellow at Observer Research Foundation, and on the phone line from Beijing is Atul Aneja, associate editor of The Hindu. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Bhadrakumar, these two meetings, let us first take the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the membership status which is going to be granted or is granted, how important was that?
Well, Girish, in my opinion, the starting point is that though BRICS has crossed the 5th year and is in the 6th year, and Shanghai Cooperation is a very well-established security forum today, these two summits in UFA have taken place in certain exceptional circumstances. This needs to be understood because in terms of India's approach to it, what India is hoping to derive out of this, much will depend on it. I personally am saying this because I personally feel that this is a defining moment in international security. 3 factors have come into play here. One is Russia, chill in Russia's relations with the West. Ensuing from the Ukraine crisis. The number 2 is this, that these two organizations have all along professed that they are not directed against any other third country, any other country. They are not, even now they are maintaining that.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that there is an adversarial content in the relationship between China and Russia on the one hand and the United States on the other. Not with the West, the United States on the other. So this is an undeniable fact because you see this 2 events took place in the shadow of the Pentagon report,
right,
which even prophesied that there might be an occasion for an armed war, in fact, with China and Russia.
That was the Pentagon report.
Yes, and the new Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman, General Dunford, has called Russia an existential threat at the same time that this UFA summits are taking place. Now, this is something which we need to factor in. The third one is, I think we need to take literally for the word that we hear from both Beijing and Moscow that the relationship between these two great powers are at the historical high. They've never been at this stage, at this level, even in the, at the time of the Soviet era. So, the fact of the matter is that the international strategic balance is volatile, and it will impact on the international security. Now, there is really no compartmentalization possible, even in a normal situation, between economics and politics. So, the international economic arena, when you speak about economic governance, global governance being the preoccupation of the BRICS, and that politics shouldn't come in there, that dividing line has blurred. And similarly, with regard to Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the fact of the matter is that in the recent period, there has been a certain kind of shift. There has been a change in the alchemy of the India-China discourse.
Right.
The relationship with Pakistan has nosedived. Now, how it is heading in the future, we really do not know. So when you look back, the substantive outcome of the BRICS summit was the creation of the bank, the contingent fund, and basically India's leadership of the bank from the Indian, specifically from the Indian point of view. Now these add up as something very substantial, but the backdrop of international security cannot be overlooked.
Cannot be overlooked.
Similarly, from the SCO, we have got a membership for which we threw in the hat in an entirely different context in international politics than what is existing now.
And it took quite some time for us to
It took quite some time, and now we need to figure out what we are going to do with this membership, because the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Central Asian region, has become the arena where the Russia-led Eurasian Economic Union and China's Belt and Road initiatives are going to interact profoundly. Now, against that backdrop only, we are entering the arena. So what I'm trying to say is it is a defining moment, and quantifying the outcome and how advantageous will all depend on the incentive or the motivation for us to use these opportunities, which means you come back to the fundamental orientations of our foreign policy in the coming period.
Srikanth, Kondapalli, would you agree with what the ambassador is saying, and this whole, India's entry into the SCO and how India will have to play its cards?
Indeed, I think the international strategic situation is going through a flux. So to the extent that the BRICS summit meeting as well as the SCO summit meeting, which were held last week, I think there are momentous developments happening around. From India's national interest perspective, the membership in the SCO is significant, as well as the new development bank of the BRICS. Both are important because, number one, the new development bank would provide for financial assistance to the infrastructure projects in the G77 countries in general and for the BRICS countries in specific. At a time when the IMF and the other Bretton Woods institutions have been shying away from the financing of the infrastructure projects, this is good news in terms of the financial allocations for the infrastructure projects. To what extent India will benefit out of this, we need to watch carefully. The suggestion for the restructuring of the IMF and World Bank also is going through a very slow process. So in this context, the new development bank is a good news. On the SCO format, while most of the national interests are served through the bilateral relations with the Central Asian republics as well as with Russia and China, there are certain things in the multilateral organization which could also benefit India's national interests. For instance, the larger international order that Ambassador Bhadrakumar mentioned is one of that aspect. However, I would sound a cautious note in terms of not seeking reciprocity for the Indian membership in the SCO as part of the, say, China's membership or Russia's membership in the SAARC process. To the extent that these two are divided, to that extent, I think the Indian membership in the SCO is good news.
So, okay, that's what you're saying is interesting, that there could be some kind of a reciprocity involved. Is that what you're trying to hint?
Indeed. While my suggestion is SCO and SAARC are two different organizations. China is a guest to the SCO, to the Central Asian republics, which is actually a Tsarist space, a Soviet space, and a Russian Federation space. While in the case of the South Asian region, India is a dominant country in this region in terms of resources, population, power, and various other indicators. So these two multilateral institutions should not be equated in terms of membership. That's what I was trying to
Okay. You're smiling, Nandan. do you want to react to what Professor says?
No, I mean, I can't find any objection to either what Mr. Bhadrakumar has said or Srikanth has said. The only point is that
So this reciprocity thing.
No, I'm not even getting into that.
You're
part.
not getting into
all I'm saying is that we also need to view this in a slightly more dispassionate manner, and I think BRICS and SCO are both very important for India. There is little doubt about that. But at the same time, I don't think that we can be taken in by the camaraderie that was displayed on camera in UFA. For example, if you look at the statement issued after BRICS, the 43 pages of it, there are many areas which are still grey. China is clearly not supporting us for a membership in the UN Security Council.
Right.
Although it is clear that they agree that the UN system has to change. There are certain other areas, including governance of cyberspace, where we clearly don't see eye to eye. We also don't see eye to eye on some measures regarding outer space. So there are areas of difference amongst this. But what I would like to emphasize is that, particularly in the backdrop of the confrontation between Russia and the US, and Russia and the West, if you want, is that BRICS, as pointed out earlier, is not really looking at challenging the West or the West as such, but is looking at rewriting or reforming the institutions that were formed after 1945 to reflect the current realities. And the current realities are that the center or the balance of power, as it were, is shifting eastwards. And therefore, the East should have a greater say, and this includes China and India, of course. The second point I'd like to make is that I am not as sanguine as Ambassador Bhadrakumar about China wanting a confrontation with the West at this stage. I think China is playing a careful game. It is, in my opinion, not fully backing the Russians yet. And if you look at it, you will find that Chinese banks, for example, despite the opportunity, are loath to advance loans to Russia for fear of upsetting Western financial institutions. So while there is a growing closeness between the two, I don't think this has yet emerged as a challenge to the West. And in that context, I will fully appreciate what Ambassador Bhadrakumar said. India has to play its cards carefully. India has to evaluate where and what benefits it gets, and then proceed in accordance with its national interests.
Okay. Uday Bhaskar, the issue about balancing interests and things like that, about India balancing its interests, with West as well as these multilateral forums. But the question is also that, if India takes this, what kind of a stand should India take in these matters now that it has become part of the SCO and also BRICS? One thing which is being said is that Russia is using this to counter some of the influence, counter the West, counter all those the isolation which it is feeling now. So you think that in this context, how does India react and where does India stand?
Well, two things I think, Girish. One is that when you look at both BRICS and SCO as two summit level exercises, from the Russian perspective, there clearly is a very visible diplomatic dimension wherein Russia has used both these summits to project itself as a nation, as a country that has the ability to bring in a lot of the medium powers, major powers, and this includes China, India, the BRICS, and the entire SCO spectrum. So this is the Russian, I would say, objective, and they have managed to get a certain degree of both visibility and consensus. But I am a little, shall we say, I'm not as convinced about the suggestion that this is such a defining moment in terms of the larger international strategic order, and that India's own choices are binary in terms of having to be with the China-Russia combined, as opposed to what is currently happening, the turbulence in the West, the decline, various issues that have been addressed. So when you say how should India position itself, I'll reiterate the point made by both Nandan and Bhadra that India has to, I think, move in a very calibrated and considered manner, because there are a number of contradictions when you look at both the BRICS and the SCO in terms of the membership and what are the objectives, or how would you define the national interest for each of the member countries. A brief word on BRICS. I think we should keep numbers in mind. If you look at the current global economic order, the combination of the United States, the European Union, and Japan as one cluster, the GDP ratio is a factor of 3:1, meaning what BRICS brings to the table, China, Russia, India, etc., I would say it's anything between 2.5 to 3. So there is that embedded element of subalternity as far as the US-led West plus Japan is considered. This is a reality, and I think BRICS is trying to rewrite, to use Nandan's phrase, and ensure that there is a more equitable regulation and management of the global economic system as you see a certain shift towards the east. But don't lose sight of the numbers. My sense is BRICS is going to remain focused on the economic development issues, which is why we have seen the bank, etc., coming into being. As far as SCO is concerned, I am frankly even more cautious than what the others have said, because I think the current membership of SCO, the expanded SCO in 2016, will have a very interesting dynamic or feature in that 4 of the member countries are nuclear weapon capable. You have Russia, you have China, you have India and Pakistan. So this is again numbers. The US-led NATO will only have 3 nuclear weapon states, that is United States, France, UK. We leave Israel out of the equation now. But if you look at their strategic orientation and underpinning, I think for India, to the extent that SCO has looked at issues like terrorism, the role that China has played as far as the larger Southern Asian region is concerned, the kind of locus and status accorded to Pakistan, these are very, very, I would say, contentious issues, and India would have to proceed in a very calibrated and careful way to see that its own interests are neither adversarially impact or that India's own space is not shrunk. Because the way in which China and Russia, I think, will orient SCO's security agenda is at this stage wait and watch. What are the priorities? How are they going to, notwithstanding the, shall we say, motherhood apple pie statement that this is not directed against anybody. If you read the subtext, and particularly in relation to how China has positioned itself as far as the challenge of terrorism is concerned, I mean, Lakhvi is the most recent case. China's position in the United Nations Security Council. These are very real issues for us. So I think that's how I would frame the Indian outcome of BRICS and SCO.
Okay.
Girish?
Atul, you are sitting far away from here. You have a different perspective sitting from there. So, how does China look at this, look at the outcome of these two summits? And as far as India is concerned, how do you look at it from there?
Well, it appears to be that there is a paradigm shift in India's foreign policy. By becoming a member of SCO, we were getting marginalized when it came to, let's say, Afghanistan, despite having spent about $2 billion in developmental aid to that country. SCO gives us a channel to get into that. And I think it's very important that China, Russia, India and Pakistan, I think this quadrilateral is now extremely important vis-a-vis Afghanistan. Second thing is that geopolitically, we cannot underestimate the rise of Eurasia. This is something which has happened gradually, which has happened with great deliberation, with China and Russia being the two anchors. I do not think that it will be correct to say that there is a rivalry between China and Russia here. The two are like co-joint twins at this time. I mean, to the extent that they are sharing even their security doctrines when it comes to development of Siberia. I mean, this is a relationship which was born out of existential threat, which came, if we just go a little backwards, this came once the regime changes were taking place in West Asia. It started with Eastern Europe and then West Asia. And then when it came to Syria, that was, and the assassination of Gaddafi, that was a defining moment of these two countries coming together. So there's a history to it. They thought Syria is the first defense line. then Iran, and then you come to Eurasia. So this is the existential cement which is linking these two, which is, I agree completely with Bhadran about this, that this is a defining moment. The two are extremely close to each other this time. I do not see any kind of rivalry. In fact, you can see Xi Jinping and Putin talking about the reconciliation of EEAU and the Belt and Road. And in fact, if you look at the larger metrics, Xi Jinping also telling India that it is time we reconciled our doctrines, such as the Act East policy and the Belt and Road, because this is a larger construct now. It is a Eurasian construct. India has got into the Eurasian construct through the SCO and complementarity with BRICS, which gets India into the developing world. So this is, and I want to emphasize a point which Bhadran made. We are not talking about the West. As far as China and Russia are concerned, they want Europe to become part of this new grouping, this new rise of Eurasia. Germany is the key player. I mean, that is something which is happening. We'll see what happens to Greece, what happens to Ukraine. But I think as far as China and Russia are concerned, they want right from the Korea that is in the Pacific, right up to Europe that is towards the Mediterranean, in fact towards the Atlantic. This is the optics of Russia and China, and I see India getting embedded into it. This was not the case earlier. Therefore, as I said earlier, this is a paradigm shift. This particular move of getting into the SCO and Modi's visit to all 5 Central Asian republics is fundamental. This is a game-changing move which has taken place.
Okay, game-changing move, Mr. Bhadrakumar. And you know, after the BRICS summit, Putin was addressing a press conference in which he says that SCO is going to be used to resolve international issues. Is this something, you know, when we are talking, they're actually looking at it at a global order? He's talking about you know, including Germany and Europe also into this.
Yes. Atul has actually given the best analysis of what is the processes which are at work there. You know, I didn't bring in this aspect of Europe, you know. Like, you know, Uday said about, you know, I mean, it's a very bleak, you know, facile assumption, United States and Europe and Japan together, and BRICS is adding up to only 1/3. That's it. I mean, these are things, you know, which are not working exactly on the basis of arithmetics, you know. There are other larger processes there, German question, and many other things come into play here. And, you know, the single biggest outcome of the BRICS this time, why Putin said this? Putin said 2 things. One, he told the Chinese president at the bilateral, that if we are together, nobody can do anything to us, either of us. Right. Now, what does it signify? Now, this is what he said. And you should read actually the lengthy dispatch of Xinhua News Agency on this meeting. Very, very important document. And then we will understand that, you know, all this Western propaganda that, you know, that there is really no harmony between Russia and China, we won't buy it anymore. You know, something has changed, and, you know, we should understand that. The second aspect is this.
And it's in our interest to be on the right side of this.
No, I don't say that, because I don't think there is any clarity on this, and I don't think at all there is any clarity on it. And on the other hand, there is a lurch towards the Americans, which is quite palpable through the last past 1 year. So therefore, you know, we are really an odd man out in this sense. Now the point is, out of the SCO, the most important thing is this development strategy, you know, which has been mentioned there. India is going to get locked in, because once this administrative procedure is completed about the admission, by the time SCO is going to be a very different body. Because, you know, this synthesis or the integration that is taking place between Eurasian Economic Union and China's Silk Road strategy there, that completely changes the scenario. And they are, by the end of the year, launching the first projects. So India is actually entering an arena, which is where I mentioned very carefully the word defining moment. Okay. You know, so, you know, a lot of it's not a question of calibration. It's a question of an overhaul. Where does India stand in the scheme of things? In international security, there has been a paradigm shift. And, you know, there are things, you know, which we need to be very clear about. And calibration, recalibration will not do.
Okay. Professor Kondapalli, you know, the Indian Prime Minister has also been talking about strategic and long-term perspectives and things like that. So, you know, from what Ambassador is saying, that there is still a lot of, you know, there is still not much clarity as far as India is concerned. Would you agree with that? Do you think that there is need for better clarity?
I think the Indian decision to approach the Central Asian republics directly is an indication of that clarity, because issues can be resolved more effectively at the bilateral level rather than at the multilateral level. For example, if you take the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, despite the nearly 2 decades of work, has not been able to resolve terrorism issue. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization has also not been able to resolve some of the regional security issues. It came up during Georgia, Ossetia, it came up during Ukraine-related issue, and so on. What it has resolved to some extent is the energy security issue, environmental issues,
Right.
To some extent drug trafficking, which is also actually tenuous in a way. Yet, I think the Indian decision to approach the Central Asian republics, as we saw Prime Minister Modi's visits to these Central Asian republics, I think that is the key for India's extended neighborhood policy
Okay.
of approaching these republics
Okay.
and linking up with them into the.
Okay. Uday Bhaskar, would you agree with that? One second thing is, how far these multilateral forums will help, which cannot be done at a bilateral level. Quickly, Uday Bhaskar, we're running out of time.
2 things, Girish, if I may. Sorry. Yeah, very quickly, I think India is proceeding in a cautious way. The suggestion that there is no clarity in what India is doing, I don't think that is a valid kind of criticism at this point, because the entire region is in a state of strategic flux. Yes, there is a lot of potential about various engagements that are taking place now, particularly between Moscow and Beijing. But the suggestion that we, or when I say, I mean that the Indian establishment, as it were, lacks clarity, or that they are not able to see what is happening, and that such clarity emerges in TV discussions in a 28-minute period, I find that a bit, shall we say, less than persuasive. India has moved cautiously. Prime Minister Modi has his own distinctive way of engaging in bilateral meetings, and his 5 visits to the Central Asian countries, I think, is very, very important as far as the region itself is concerned. Now, about multilateral and bilateral, I think India's own position is that when it comes to Pakistan particularly, we would prefer to stick to the bilateral framework enunciated in Shimla, reiterated many times after that. And I think I did see a couple of references, both in the Chinese media and in some Russian blogs, that SCO could enable some kind
Absolutely.
of
Yes.
engagement between India and Pakistan, is where I would again monitor it very carefully.
Okay.
To go back to the point I made, China's entire role as far as Southern Asia is concerned, not just now, but for the last 30 years, engagement with Pakistan, nuclear, missile cooperation, the Nelson's Eye being turned when it comes to terrorism, all of these are issues that we will have to engage
Okay.
and really monitor
Okay.
very
Okay,
carefully.
Uday.
So my own concern is that SCO as an organization, okay, Girish.
Okay. Nandan, SCO as an organization, the ambition to, which is there in some of the statements and all, that they would be able to play a role in bringing India and Pakistan's problem, resolving the problems. You think that is an ambitious target?
No, I think that's an over-ambitious target, not just ambitious. But I would like to engage
Quickly,
with some of the
Nandan, we are completely
with
running out of time.
all the points that were made. The world is in state of flux, no dispute. Therefore, India has to carefully evaluate everything. When you say that the world is in state of flux, it also means that there is no clarity. Flux is lack of clarity. So therefore,
Okay.
asking India to take chances or sides now, I think is way too early. We need to proceed very carefully. and
Very quickly,
cautiously.
last words.
SCO didn't offer to mediate between India and Pakistan. Putin said it in the press conference that it offers an additional avenue for the 2 countries,
Right.
in addition to what they already have for resolving their differences and disputes. That's what it is.
So
not a mediator role.
Not a mediator role. Okay, I think on that note, we completely run out of time. We have such a panel today that each one of them should get 30 minutes actually too. But we don't have time. But this has been a very interesting discussion. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time tomorrow.